Hey everybody, I'm back. I'm Richard Vigorelli, and this is part 2 of my interpretations of the universe of True Blood. I decided to forego the tea for this one. I got too cold too quick and wasn't in the mood for more. So, here we are. Now, just as another quick aside, like I did in part 1, True Blood is a TV show that was on HBO about 10 years ago, long before Game of Thrones ever happened. And I kind of enjoyed it. So when I got here to the South, and given that it was October, I decided, let's watch it, because why not? Okay? Well, I'm a little bit smarter than I was 10 years ago. And I've got some things. Previously, I talked about what Vampire Society would actually look like. And now we're going to tie that in with what the humans would do about it. Okay? Now, as I said before in the previous one, the humans, although stupid, aren't blind. And every now and again they'll kind of poke their head up and go, hey, hang on now. That's funny. What they'll do is they'll start to notice very, very weird things going on. They'll investigate, and they'll figure out, hey, vampires is reals. That's bad. We don't like that. Okay? Humans have this thing. They really, really don't like it when another organism infringes on their lives. It's not just the stay alive instinct that everything has. Humans are particularly good at it. I mean, come on. We wiped out an entire species of canid in Europe because every once in a while they would eat a sheep. Okay? They got kind of a thing, humans. Okay? So, with another apex predator, basically the same thing as a human, only significantly more dangerous, and it's a vampire, and it uses humans for procreation, that would be public enemy number 1 in all societies. Okay? All the way back, as humans probably would have figured this out sometime around the early medieval era, if not into the classical era, vampires probably would not have made it into the modern age. Okay? Even going underground and turning and making themselves myth and all of that in order to send up a smoke screen to keep humans from attacking them and all of that, they probably would not have made it. Okay? Even with their superpowers. Because half the world is closed to them. What do you mean? Well, half the planet's in sunlight at any given time. Okay? So, humans can move in sunlight and darkness. Vampires can only move in darkness. Or artificial light, say from a fire or a light bulb. Okay? That's a significant weakness for vampires. Also, while a human can die from exsanguination, and a vampire can't, it's really not that hard to get rid of them, okay? And we'll go into that, alright? So, I would expect there to be the things all the way back, like, now if you see a guy and he's got really long teeth, don't talk to him. Keep going the other direction, get your friends, we'll take care of it, okay? Etc., etc., etc. There would be things to look for that everybody would know about. Everybody would know the weaknesses because eventually they'd get figured out. Okay? But, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Vampire Society goes unnoticed, and we're okay. All the way to the modern day, it's the start of the 21st century, vampires come out. Okay? So, it would not take humans very long to decide this is not okay. There would be entire governments that would come out and say, yeah, we don't like you, you're not allowed in our country, get out, if we see you, you're dead. Okay? Reason being is, they're predators, they're parasites. Okay? Now, there's plenty of governments out there that don't like homosexuals, and it's actually illegal there. What do you think they're going to do to somebody who's undead? Okay? Guess. Alright? Now, obviously, Vampire Society is not going to be pleased with this, so there's going to be political tensions between vampires and humans, depending on the political sphere. Okay? Some countries may be more lenient. Others definitely won't be. Okay? Some countries may say, well, you know, as long as you only take your fair share, whatever that is, and, you know, keep your population at this level, we're cool with you. Alright? Or others will say, yeah, man, it's fine. Go ahead and integrate in society. I don't care. You know, just don't cause a problem. Alright? Drink your True Blood. Okay? All of that. There would be an ongoing political arena among all of the not only the vampire countries between themselves, and all the human countries between themselves, but the vampire countries and the human countries intermixing. Okay? Because the vampire countries occupy the same territory as the human countries. Probably even the exact same borders. Okay? Some of them may stretch over. You know, there could be a republic of the Rio Grande. That's a vampire nation. Now, the Rio Grande forms the southern border of Texas, which is a United State, and Mexico. Now, if that country straddles that border, then they have to report to the Mexican government and the Texan government, and also by extension the United States federal government. This could get complicated very, very quickly. I also would not expect there to be border skirmishes between all of them happening often. Now, let's say Mexico and the United States decide to beat each other up, and the vampires don't really like that. So the vampires may come out and say, hey, knock it off, kids. Go down the street, go outside if you're going to do that. Okay? So there may be some very, very complicated political maneuvering on either or both sides. Okay? The reason for this is I highly doubt the vampires would respect human political borders. And I also highly doubt that the humans would respect vampire political borders. So there would be a lot of political stuff. There would also be road markers everywhere saying, hey, guess what? You're entering a vampire kingdom. They don't necessarily like you. You may want to cover up. Okay? Now, because of that, eventually there is going to be some kind of vampire hero that pops up that says, you know what, we're superior to humans. They need to be our cattle. And he's going to start essentially farming humans. Because it's food, it's also how they procreate. Gee. Now, the humans obviously are not going to like this, so there's going to be a fight. The problem is, vampires look human until they don't. Well, I have to know if the guy I'm hanging out with, or the woman I'm hanging out with, is actually going to try and eat me. So eventually, I'm going to come up with a way to actually detect whether or not the person sitting across from me, or next to me, or even in the same room as me, is in fact a vampire. Okay? So, there would be a ton of research and a ton of resources poured into a vampire detector. Okay? I'm willing to bet that the vampires have some kind of pheromone or some kind of heat signature that's specific to them, that the humans could create technology that would find that. And then, you know, beep, 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 hey, that's a vampire, not unlike a carbon monoxide detector that we would have. Okay? I'm also willing to bet that any public area that wanted to remain exclusively human would have a vampire detector posted at the door, and as soon as they walk through the front door, beep, 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 get out. Okay? such as. Alright? Also, while the vampires would undoubtedly keep their weaknesses secret from the humans would eventually come up with it eventually. Okay? Because it doesn't matter how great and secret a thing is, eventually someone's going to spill the beans, or eventually someone's going to figure it out. It's just the way it is. It's a lot easier for one person to keep the secret than a million. Okay? So, humans, in either a war that happened or an inevitable war, they would start prepping for this, they would be coming up with weapons that would exploit the vampire weaknesses. For example, there would probably be a ton of research poured into some kind of light that would, within 99%, mimic the effects of the sun. And it would be installed on your driveway or at your front door. If you suspected a person of being a vampire when they knocked on your door in the middle of the night and they're hungry, you just flick that on. If they screamed and burst into flames, hey, look! Okay. And if they didn't, well, come on in. We'll help you out. Okay? Now, as a result of this, the vampires would also come up with some kind of defense. At first, it would just be a covering, like this. Okay? This is keeping me warm because I don't have hair and it's cold and wet outside. Okay? But it would also kind of be obvious that, you know, the guy walking around in the cloak all day, probably a vampire. Also, I kind of watched him flick out some fangs and attack something. Could be a thing. In order to maintain that anonymity, because that's the best way to hunt for a vampire, is to come up with some kind of sunblock that would prevent sunlight from actually touching the skin. They would basically have to bathe in it quite regularly whenever they wanted to go outside. The decay rate on that, especially in a human environment, might be important. Okay? Eventually they would have to reapply it, but it would prevent sunlight from affecting them. Okay? And allow them to day walk. Alright? Now, the silver would also be very, very common in human weaponry, especially when dealing with vampires. I'm willing to bet that melee weapons such as knives would be laced with silver in the steel, and that way when it went in, it would do that much more damage. Okay? Also, any kind of projectile weapon, such as a bullet or an arrow, would be either silver laced or silver encased. That is, it would have a regular bullet that would be, you know, steel, copper, lead, whatever, that would intentionally shatter once it entered the vampire body and released silver, which would basically poison them. The bullet might not kill them, but it will definitely slow them down because of the silver. Okay, and then you can just do the whatever it is you need to do. Okay. Also, because of this, anybody in any kind of armed services of any fashion, whether it be a police keeper like a police officer, or National Guard, or even the Marines, would know how to kill a vampire. It would be part of basic training. And you would also have very specific weaponry in order to deal with that, should that threat become realized. Okay? Now, as a result of this, the vampires would also come up with armor in order to deal with that, because armor is usually created in response to a weapon. Okay? We have Kevlar because plate mail stopped working. Okay? Because firearms. Okay? We developed chainmail because the leather jerkin was not effective for the new kind of weaponry that we started producing. Okay? So, it would be a constant arms race between vampires creating, between humans creating weapons to get rid of, to get rid of vampires, and vampires creating armor to deal with the human weaponry. Eventually, it would be all out. One of the things that all thinkers do agree on, if there was another species of humanoid on Earth, is warfare would be basically constant. Okay? Pretty much every single house would be armed. Pretty much every single house would not only have a security system, but that security system would be anti-vampire enabled. Such as, if somebody knocks on the front door, you don't know it, they suddenly get a blast of sunlight or a whiff of colloidal silver. As a result, silver will become much more valuable than gold. It also will not, because of its utility, be a form of currency. Okay? Gold will still probably maintain its status as a basis of currency in many countries, but other things will become currency. These are things that people would value so they can get the silver, because silver is what would be important to them. Okay? Because, well, people don't like being lunch. Okay? Now, weapons are great, but if you don't have feasible tactics in order to use them, they're totally useless. Okay? So one of the tactics that I was thinking about is, let's say that the humans decide they are going to create enclaves and then post guards, much like we did in the medieval era. Okay? And those guards would then be outfitted with the weapons that would be anti-vampire. Now, because of vampires' inherent speed and strength, standard warfare would not be effective. Okay? Yeah, you'd probably get a few, but eventually they would overwhelm the wall. So, what I would expect is not only there to be a flood light every few feet that exposes the vampires to sunlight and will eventually overwhelm their armor, but I would also expect there to be traps laid out that would restrain, if not destroy, the vampires. Here's why. Why should I expend ammunition and risk myself getting harmed in melee combat when I can just let the sunlight do it for me? Okay? So I'm willing to bet that silver nets would be very, very common in this scenario, and all you have to do is, spring it on a group of them, let them sit, and, figure out that, oh, well, they're wearing that stinking ointment, so hose them down, get the ointment off, wait for sunrise, problem solved. We'll go out and clean up the parts and call it a day. Okay? That would probably be very, very commonplace, especially in the more contentious areas where there's vampire-inhuman interaction. I would also expect, in the political machinations and in order to one-up the humans so that they could create the human farm, vampires to specifically target military individuals to turn, and also political individuals to turn. Anybody with that kind of talent, which means vampire spies in intrigue would be unbelievably common. Okay? Just the way it works. Now, all of this will skew evolution in humans and vampires by extension. So, martial societies would become much more commonplace. Xenophobia would also be very, very common. And interplay between the different types of human would probably be a little bit more contentious because of that xenophobia. Okay? Race relations in human society would be significantly more heated, or they wouldn't exist at all because of the common enemy. It just depends on what a specific group would do regarding the vampires. Okay? If you see more vampires coming out of a given country, or a given ethnic group versus another one, then that ethnic group may get branded as a traitor. And in order to squelch the growth of the vampires, they may get deleted. Okay? It would probably be pretty commonplace to have wars like that, especially in the less developed areas of the planet. Yeah. Not exactly a rosy looking universe, is it? Well, that's about all I've got for you regarding my logic placed on the universe of True Blood. So, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and if you have a IP that you would like me to kind of do this treatment for and apply some real-world logic to it, I'd love to hear it. I also have a Patreon. Feel free to pop over there and drop in your suggestions. I'm going to be doing some voting of things there, especially for movies that I like, that I actually own, and I'll be reviewing them from a critical standpoint. So, take care, guys. Bye-bye.